Welcome everyone to episode 123 of Raw Sport. My name is Ahmed Al Hooli, and we are back with the man himself, Mr. Stephen Della. Welcome to Raw Sport, buddy. How's things?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Yeah, just poking along a bit steady here on a Monday morning.
All right, mate. Steve, 2 weeks ago, you had a huge show, 40th anniversary for Fortitude Boxing. You had none other than the man himself, Mr. Eddie Hearn, working together with yourself and hosting a great domestic clash with uh, with an interesting situation. Because as I said to Eddie Hearn when I had him last on the show here, I said, Eddie, you've done something not many people in boxing do. You've honored your word, and
Mm.
he did. He came back. You guys put on a wonderful show, and many people enjoyed it. Some great results. Uh, Wonderful night overall. Take us through that experience dealing with these larger corporations coming down under, working with us local guys, and making things happen.
Yeah, it was really different for me because in 40 years, I've always worked on the live gate. I love the live gate. I like the people coming to the fights like we used to do when I was young. You know, you get 4,000 people a night at the fights. Um, and this was the first live show we did broadcast. Got to get all the words right for the young ones, doing the broadcast, the stream and stuff. And it was really different because I'm used to being able to say yes, no. But that was different. We had to work with them, and the time frame between Australia and England, of course, made everything that should have been done in the day took 3 days, and it was just getting used to that. But I had a great team. I had Taz Brown and Mariah Turner, who you'll all see fighting down in Melbourne on the 7th of November on Sam LeBruno's show, and Chrissy V. They all helped, and without the girls, it wouldn't have come together the way it did. Now, moving along from there, working with the broadcast was absolutely brilliant. Dark Art did it, and everyone was just so easy to work with. And Eddie Hearn made ultimate showman. Ultimate showman. I've never seen anybody work the room, work the floor, work everything the way he did. He had patience and time for everybody, and it was just enormous. And working the lighting and everything else, everybody was professional, so it was really easy to work with them. All we had to do was supply information to them, and away it went.
Wow. Take us through the night, special night for
Oh,
yourself.
big night. I was getting around big night myself. I had long trousers and a shirt on, jacket and everything, instead of a tracksuit. Because I think they'll probably bury me in a tracksuit. And I was getting around with that and having a yarn to people a bit more than normal. Mate, it was grand to see the room. Upstairs was packed out. It was couldn't get any more people in. We had to turn people away. Downstairs, we only had about 40 tables. It fitted in lovely. Um, and everybody was buzzing. And I don't want to be to a big note about that, but Fortitude fight nights are like that. You know, like the crowd gets here. Brisbane crowd love the fights. They love the fights. And, you know, like they're all drinking and eating and everything. And you don't have any fights in the crowd or anything at a Fortitude night. It just flows. And when Yusuf come out first up, Yusuf did come out, and he got a good reception because he's in Queensland. You know, we have to handle a few of them Mexicans from down south, and he got a good reception. But when Jake come out, they lifted the roof off the joint, and it was just I was in the corner there, of course, and when I'm looking around, I was wrapped, mate. I was wrapped. Eddie standing over in the other corner, and for us to have pretty much, he's in the top three biggest promoters in the world. To have him there at a Fortitude show on our 40th anniversary, um, without planning it was just surreal. Man, I just look. I can't find words to describe it. I was that wrapped on the night, and you know, we showcased um, Princess Leia on the show. She's an up and coming Indigenous girl that we work with, and young Alex was in the main event, and Sky, of course, and gee, Sky caught that girl at the belly with the best rip. And it was all over. She didn't want anything more of it. One could hit in the bread basket. It was all over. All the wind's gone out of her. But some of the undercard fights that didn't get shown um, were just unbelievable. You know, like it was just a great night. We opened the show with little Noah Wills. Um, Noah Wills is the son of the very first fighter I ever trained, Gary Wills, who went on to be number 1 in the world. So that was pretty good too. It was sort of like a lineage, I think you call it, as you come down, and a corporate fight, and just did a normal Fortitude night, mate, and it's for the community, and it was just. I just keep saying, it was unreal. It was surreal. Mate. It's probably the best show we've ever done, and with the best people in the world. And I love fighting Billy Hussein's boys. We always get a good fight out of Billy Hussein, and they always come to win. You know, it's they come to attack you, and they just make great fights. And Billy's so easy to work with. You know, like it's. You need more like Billy of these blokes, mate. This is the money. This is the deal. Blah blah blah. Yes or no. And with Billy, it's not a problem. I'll come back to you within 24 hours. You got your answer on everything, and away you go. And we have your history with the Dib family. My son Greg fought Billy for a spot at the Commonwealth Games, and we got the win. And and now we've had young Yusuf, and what a lovely lad he is. They come along, they helped in every way. I can't complain about a thing, not a thing on the night.
Wow.
The all the people that work with us on these shows. Lauren Kidd running the back there, she's as tough as nails to getting around, throwing commands, getting them all out on time and everything. And Taz Brown, I look, Taz Brown. Are really good people. They own a couple of restaurants, and after the fire in 2019, they helped us out big time. And Taz was up to 3 o'clock some mornings making this happen.
Which
So
Tassie Brown? Is it Tassie Brown from Melbourne or up there?
no, Tassie Brown from Brisbane, not not Tassie Brown from Hobart. No, gee,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
geez, him and I'd be running amok. We wouldn't be getting too much work done. We'd be having a quiet beer somewhere. Yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, he's always, he always brings the party, Tassie Brown.
Oh,
Good
he's
bloke.
flamboyant. Yeah, good fella.
All right. You worked with the uh, largest media company in boxing at the moment, where
Yeah,
boxing is living at the moment is the Zone.
yeah.
Different sort of network, streaming network.
Yeah,
What was that like? Did it
mate.
bring
What
its
was the
challenges?
mate? Yeah, but it didn't really have any. Um, Probably because I've never worked with anybody before on this type of thing, and everybody was so professional. Nothing was a problem. Now Christy V runs with DAZN. She's their front, and you cannot get a better person. She goes out of her way. I met Christy V and a couple of other girls years ago with Juco. And everybody got on like a house on fire back then. They're all working for them, and they've all moved on since those days. And mate, Chrissy'd be ringing me at 10 o'clock Australian time. Now she's living in New Zealand, so they're a couple of hours in front over there. They need to be because they're trying to catch up to us. But she's the bloody Kiwis. But Chrissy was nothing but helpful. I can't complain. It was easy. It
That's
was
great to
easy.
hear.
The biggest problem was getting the final designs for the ropes and the canvas and everything, settling on that. Because I think over in England, they think you just push a button and all of a sudden, boom, out comes a canvas printed the way they wanted, and ropes and corner pads. So for me, that was the biggest problem, and only because of the time frame. And then again, LJ, the canvas people. Well, the night before the fight, they were still sewing up the rope covers. So
Wow.
everybody just worked to bring it together, mate. It was. I can't complain about anybody. Everything was easy from my point of view.
All right. Sounds great. Um, 40 years in boxing in Australia, in a lot smaller market compared to the rest of the world. What's one takeaway that you could pretty much share with us that that you've learnt over the years in order to survive for such a long time in a very niche sport in a big country? How how'd you navigate such a tough environment for so long?
It's like anything. You've got to have a passion and a love for it, and it's got to come above all everything else almost. Apart from family, family always comes first. Um, but I've had a love for boxing for as long as I can remember. Um, from watching, not watching, from listening to the fights on the radio. All the men used to talk about the fights, and there'd be gloves. Somebody would have a set of boxing gloves somewhere so the young blokes could punch on, whether it was for their entertainment or the boys, us boys, to be arguing to settle down because I got a heap of brothers and sisters, and some of my sisters could fight as good as the boys, and I just always had that love for it. And as it went along. Um, I had my first fight in the 70s and as an amateur. And then I was blessed to run into a bloke called John Burke, the Silver Fox. I was working out in the bush out around Birdsville, Windora, and Quilpie, which probably means nothing to you blokes down there. But the smallest cattle station I worked out on there was 5,500 square miles.
Wow.
And I loved it, all day on horseback, chasing cattle and what for and what not. And but I still had that thing in me of wanting to fight. And I was coming down to Brisbane. A mate of mine, Greg Leeser he was started fighting main events at the hall here in Brisbane. So I started running with him when I'd be down. I still used to smoke in those days. I'd have a tin of log cabin tobacco in my pocket, and I was keeping up with him and what for and what not. And Johnny Burke said to me, "Why don't you do a bit of training?" So I started doing a bit of training, and that. And John was able to mentor me all the way through. The same with the fights and in the gym, watching what he did with the kids because I was always keen on it to learn about different things. And then when I had a bit of cut a long story short, I had a car accident, and that buggered me neck up, and I started helping Johnny, and all the years I've known John, and even to this day, John's 87. He's back in the gym here, teaching some of the kids. I've never seen him teach anybody else or give anybody else hints about boxing. He's old school, kept it all quiet to himself, and because we were pretty far advanced on boxing to a lot of them. Then John was playing music in the gym, and the different things we did compared to a lot of them. A lot of them stayed the old school ways. So from there, I had an understanding. Like my first fight with John was at the over the Wollongabba Police Boys Club over there, and I got a pair of old volleys on, a pair of shorts on, and a singlet. And John's got the singlet tied up at the back with a piece of string so it doesn't fall off my shoulders. So, you can fight. And I remember Con Russell was the trainer there, former Australian lightweight champion, I think he was. And we're going upstairs with a hole in the fights, and they've just tipped out a sugar bag full of gloves on the ground. And everyone's got a set of gloves for their pair of gloves for their kid. And John's put these gloves on me, and they're old horsehair ones. And they'd have been around 150,000 fights. They were buggered. And anyhow, we get up to the boxing ring, and I got there and got in the ring there and looking across. I'm just remembering this. It's pretty vivid. And I look across, and the other bloke got in, and he was from the army. He was the army team, and he got in there, and he had this beautiful pair of kangaroo skin boots, which were pretty popular in those days. And he had nice gown on and shorts and everything. I remember saying to Johnny, "Jesus, look how good does he look?" And John said, "Yeah, it won't do him any good if he can't fight." And I just said that so that you've understood that. And from and of course I was lucky. I got the win. And from there on, I learned from John about looking after your fighters. The fighters come first before anything else. And he eventually told me to bugger off and get my own gym. It's time you went and got your own gym, which I did. I went up to Bookmakers Club in Brisbane and set up a gym there. And I always made a point from that day on of the fighters first. So all my fighters were well dressed, looked good. And even if they couldn't fight, they looked good. On away we went. And you're talking about how do you survive? Well, that's how I survived, because I put my fighters first. I didn't throw them to the wolves. I watched plenty of shows that were on, and I watched promoters telling trainers that their boys got to fight this boy, knowing the trainers would do it, knowing full well their boys would get bumped off, absolutely knocked out. So I was able to build loyalty with the fighters over the years. And I'm proud to say, well, Gary Wills is the first fight I ever had. He still comes here, you know. And that was, geez, that's 1985. That's 40 years ago. You know, he still comes here, brings his sons. He's got both his sons training now, and I get those people come back, and then I started promoting, and because I promoted myself, I didn't have to do what the other promoters want, and they always wanted to suit them. And boxing is about people, and probably going to go over these things a few times, but boxing is about the fighter and his health and his well-being before, during, and after boxing. So we don't just drop off them and never see them again. It's we work with them all the way. So because I was promoting myself, I didn't have to. I wasn't dictated to anyone. Didn't make much bloody money, I can tell you, but I wasn't dictated by anybody, and that's how we've been able to survive, and the culture we built in the gym over the years. Like, I got members here now that have been coming for 17 years, and
Wow.
that's a long time to be able to hold members. Most gyms hold them maximum 5 years, and they might hold 3 or 4 fighters for 10 years, from a junior into a senior, but very, very rarely. Um, and it's because we built a community, mate. I've got blokes coming out of the woodwork helping now, and that's why, because we built a community. Geez, one stage there in, I don't know, 2014 or 15, somewhere around there, I went and worked in a factory for 12 months through the day to keep the gym going. So I'd go there and work, and come back in the afternoons to the gym. The boys kept it open, those that were doing PT. So I had to do that to keep it going. It hasn't been an easy ride, but it's been a great ride. The people I've met have been unbelievable, and people I've had to deal with. Very rarely, I've probably thrown 3 or 4 people out in 40 years. Because if you're not much chop of a person, you don't last long. It's not, hey, Armin, you won't believe this, but it's not politically correct, Jim, at all. It's not in the slightest way. It's not. It's a real gym. It's a real place for real people. And I feel those things are the part of the reason, the main reason we'll be able to survive, is it's a community gym. It's hardcore boxing too. Don't get me wrong. That's how we started off. But it's a community gym, like somebody be going through a divorce or something, and we work with them, or someone's just down and out. It's what they should be. You know.
Wow. Speaking of boxing in this country, where are we at? Are we in a good place?
We're in a good place, but we could be in a great place if there was more promoters around. Like, oh, you're chucking names in here that want to crucify me again. Um, Blokes like Sam Labruno, he's one of your mob from down there in Melbourne. Sam Labruno, Brian Armatruda, blokes like that put their boys on any show. There's no alliance. There's no ringing up and saying, "Oh, hang on, that bloke can't fight on your show. He's one of my boys." Because there's a couple of them that do that sort of thing. They should be able to fight on any show. And if they did that and they keep putting on good matches, well, things would be good. Like we've got Mariah Turner going down to Melbourne to fight Steffi Lee Cuddy. Well, we're going to get down there amongst them all Mexicans and give them a run for their money. And we're happy to travel, and we're happy to take a chance. And Fortitude kids fight on anybody's show as long as the conditions are right. For both of us, for me and for the promoter, it has to be the best. We might be down there fighting the Ibrahim Bella in the new year with Jake Wiley. Sort of, I'm talking to Sam about that at the moment. There's a bit of a cat out of the bag, you know. There's we did have a potential fight with Jalen Tate up here, but he got knocked out by Liam Wilson, and they tell me that he's training again, and we might be able to get something going with him in the new year. But the money and the conditions have got to be right. But all my boys travel and all my girls travel. There's not one of them that doesn't. We fight anywhere and everywhere if the conditions are right, and that's what has to promoters have to allow. If they've got signed fighters, they have to allow them to do that sort of thing because there's not enough opportunities in Australia, and that way it'll kick on better. And if we can get that, the other mentality that we've got a problem with is, which started in around about, in my opinion, in around the Muhammad Ali era, when they started using closed circuit TV and they started wanting all these perfect records, and that spoils boxing. Because look, you go and watch the football, you go and watch the Broncos, best team in Australia, and you watch the Broncos play, and they'll lose a game. Well, no one goes, oh shit, we're not going to watch the Broncos ever again. You keep going. Well, boxing used to be like that because Ahmed, I can fight you and lose every round, and it can be a really close fight. That close, it's not funny, and they're great fights, and we've got to get that mentality back in. That good fights is what the people want to see. They don't want to see 16-0 fighting 8-5-2 and knock him out again. And the next one like that. They want to see good fights. And that's another thing. You're talking about how we survived. Is 9 times out of 10 we put good matched fights on. Not perfect records, good matched fights on. And that's what the crowd wants. They want entertainment. You know, they want to see a fight. And if you give them that, that helps a lot. You better have something to say here, Ahmed. I'm carrying on like a pork chop.
Well, I'll tell you something. That domestic clash 2 weeks ago between Tib and Wiley, beautiful fight.
Yeah.
Great domestic clash.
Yeah.
No boundaries for any promoter, any network. Two good local fighters put it on. The fans were entertained. The sport won.
Yeah, 100%.
Not enough of that. We've
Hun-
seen a week before that, or in that same week, I believe, an event put behind the pay-per-view wall, and too many mismatched fights on
Well,
on
that,
on the night, right? And and I'm not saying this out of spite or any of the sorts. I'm just literally analyzing the sport from the outside in. And what we saw in that night was, in my opinion, and that seems to be the sentiment in boxing circles around the country, is that that night did more damage than good, because we saw too many mismatched fights put behind the pay-per-view wall, and people paid big money and they were really disappointed. Now, I believe, and when I had Eddie Hearn on, who we went on a bit about this, right? And what he said,
Ahmed, you there, mate?
yeah, he's still there, all good.
Hello?
Yeah. You there, mate? We have lost the man. Let me get him back in here. Give me a sec, mate. I'll bring you back in. Unfortunately, he must have got a phone call. Stephen, can you hear me, mate? Give me a sec. I'll get him. We'll bring him back on. Let me get him out of here. So, unfortunately, we lost him there for a second. We'll try and bring him back on. His phone must have rung. But perfect example. The same week we had a pay-per-view event that many people were disappointed with, and was behind a pay-per-view wall. And honestly, it let people down. People paid big money to watch too many mismatched fights. Here he is. Stephen?
Back again, mate. Yeah.
Gotcha, mate. You must have copped a phone call for sure.
I did,
That's
mate,
what tends to happen.
unfortunately.
Yeah. So as I was saying, it couldn't have happened any better for you folks. That week you had the pay-per-view a ton of mismatched fights. People were disappointed with the outcome. Then on Saturday night on the Zone live, if you're a subscriber, it's free, obviously. If not, you pay $9 a month or whatever, or $13, whatever it is, and you get a ton of fights. Anyway, you had the national domestic clash, which was a ripper.
Great fight.
People loved it. And 3 or 4 days earlier, you had a card that many were disappointed about, and that's not coming from me, because I didn't watch the pay per view, and I refused to pay to watch that sort of matchups, those sorts of matchups. So anyway, back to our conversation. Moral of the story is that we need more of those domestic clashes, because the fighters need to progress and develop, in my opinion, before they go out to these international fights and take on these champions abroad, because that's where the development happens as they increase their the difficulty of their opponents locally before they go abroad. So that fragmentation that's happening at the moment, and that those matchups that are occurring, um, they're to the detriment of the sport, in my opinion. But you're the expert.
Well, I'm definitely not an expert. There's,
You,
there's quite a few out there. But look, it's really simple. I've got a couple of young lads that fought on the undercard there, and I'm looking at the match them for the 18th of October.
September.
We've got a little show on here in the gym, and we do them. We run them here in the gym, and 9 times out of 10 we just break even on them because they're development shows, and they're great shows. The atmosphere is enormous. People go wild. Um, but like when you're matching these fights, like one lad particularly is going to be a very very good boxer, and I'm looking at lads there, and I could put him on. There's about 7 boys there at his weight division, and I could put him on with them. But I know if I put him on with them, he's going to stop them 1 or 2 rounds, and that's no good to me, and that's no good to my boy either. As the manager for him, like because Luke Meldon, he's my head trainer and has been for years now. And we sit down and we talk. It's no good for the lad, and this is where they've got to get past that. Um, they've got to come up. But my boy's not good enough to fight somebody that's had 8 fights for 8 wins, for example, or someone that's had 8 wins and 5 losses. You've got to build them up. And another bad thing that the promoters won't do, a lot of them, is they've got 2 lads. One lad that's had 2 wins and 4 losses, and the other lad's had 3 wins and 7 losses. They put them together. Paul Nazari does it in Sydney. Paul Nazari does it in Sydney, and he puts on good fight nights there, and those lads are all getting good experience, And this is what it needs, is investment from the promoters into the fighters, not just the good ones, because the good ones all get knocked off eventually. It doesn't
yeah.
matter. It doesn't matter who they are. Eventually they get knocked off by the younger ones coming through, and it's a progression. And rugby league is a good example of it. It is they were flying because that was all there virtually was for years. When I played football, no great footballer either, by the way, just a hooker. And everybody played, but then it dropped off because of other sports. Well, then they got their brains and they invested in to the juniors and got them going, and then football's gone good. And boxing's the same. If the promoters will put on the kids that aren't the big names and give them just as many opportunities. Comes back to what I said before, and comes back to you're saying about the fights, which I never watched those fights. Unfortunately, I was here working in the gym that night. Is they've got to give them opportunities, and they've got to put on fair matched fights. And it can be difficult sometimes. The heavyweights in Australia, it's really, really hard. We put
In the
Alec
world, in the
in the
world,
world.
there's not many heavyweights at
Yeah,
the
well,
moment. Yeah.
like Alec Leopold, we put him on with Tom, and Tom had one fight. Mate, we went through 5 different blokes. Yes, we'll take the fight. Then they pull out one after the other, one after the other, and that's hard on the kid. I know, so I understand. promoters the difficulty they have with those sort of things. But when you get down, like light heavyweight down to featherweight, there's plenty of good fights in Australia for the boys,
Yeah.
and there's no reason like in the
Other than
70s.
other than politics, but yeah.
Yeah, it's right. There's no other reason that they can't. And I'm not about to start naming certain people or anything because that's just ridiculous.
You
Everybody
don't
knows
need
who's
to.
who in the zoo.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who's in the zoo. It's not that big of a zoo, We've got a few galahs and a few monkeys running around, and it's everybody knows who's who. Um, and it needs to be worked together. I've seen it over the years, where certain people had complete and utter control in the 60s, the 70s, and into the 80s, and then it got broken up a lot more from there on. And other people are trying to, they're trying to take over, and they all get this idea that they're going to rule, they're going to be the top dog. There is no top dog. There's only all of us. There's
Yeah.
all of us, and we all need to be working together. One bloke wants to be the Don of boxing, the other bloke wants to be the king of boxing. Like pull your heads in, boys, and work together, and it'd work out a lot better.
On a global level, they're struggling at the moment to be the top dons, let alone in a small fragmented market in Australia, where I don't understand why that mindset is coming into the sport in the first place. I mean, you see a sport where the kids that come into the sport come from, like let's be real. They don't come from much. They fight because that's what they know. And having that mentality and coming in with that mentality just tells me one thing: these guys are not going to be treated well.
No,
They're going to be
well,
taken for an absolute ride.
but look here again. I'm going on big noting again. 9 times out of 10, when kids fight on our shows, they get paid more than they do on the others. And when we fly them in, we fly them into Qantas or Virgin. We put them in a good hotel like the Ridges up the road. Ridges, you need to sponsor me. The amount of people we've been putting in there, and the overseas fighters, when we bring them over, like there's a bloke comes from Thailand. He supplies for everyone. We fly in Qantas or Singapore, and we fly them direct. None of this business of having them sitting in Singapore for 16 hours or 12 hours waiting for a flight. We bring them in direct, and we don't have a problem getting fighters like that. And this is how they all need to be treated good. But one of the things that people need to do is when a kid turns pro here at Fortitude, we sit them down. We get them a business name registered. We get insurance. We start putting everything in line from because they're in business. They've now, as a professional boxer, they've gone into business. They've got to get their tax organised, and then they've got to learn to do the social media because it's a big thing these days for young people. I'm happy to sit down and read the paper and have a cup of tea, but they want to be on all this social media and podcasts and everything, um, and and this is what needs to be done. The trainers, the promoters, everybody needs to help the boys and the girls to bring them up, and that will only enhance boxing. Full stop. And people will look at it more and more and go, geez, how professional is that? Like Jake Wiley, I got people running at him now to help him, Mariah Turner is another one. And Leah Rubin, because they've got good socials and
Yeah,
they're
it's
out there
funny.
and they're good people.
It's
They're
funny. It's
you
funny you
come in,
mentioned socials because the WBO had Jake Paul giving an educational lesson on how to enhance his socials and the importance of them
yeah,
in today's fighter's journey.
yeah, yeah. Like I got my they're up me all the time here. The like Mariah Turner, she does a lot of our work here, and John Hawker, and they're up me all the time. Steve, you got to do this. You go, oh, come on, give me a break, will you, mate? Let the young ones do it. I think you would probably be the when you got me the other day, the first one I've done a real podcast with. And I just sort of in the last couple of years, I realised the importance of it in this day and age. you know, and that's what the trainers, if possible, but the promoters need to do. And I see quite a lot of them starting to do it now, you know, but we need more. We need more help from them to the fighters, because a lot of the fighters are shy. They say, "Oh, look, I really don't need to do anything till I get up there." When you get up there, it's too late
Yeah,
because you're up there. Now you want to be able to get up there with a good profile, you know.
100%. 100%. Makes a lot of sense. All right, Steve, I've taken up a lot of your time. You've been very, very generous, as usual. Um, Before we wrap things up, you got any parting words for us? Any words of wisdom, mate?
Just really be good to people. Help people wherever you can help, and don't look for something from them when you help them. Just help them. If you can give somebody a feed, cup of tea, even a packet of cigarettes to some bloke that's doing, or some woman that's doing it tough, do it, because we're all living pretty good lives. And remember, look after your fighters. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. 40 years at Fortitude Boxing, Stephen Della. Thank you very much for joining me on
Thanks,
Raw
mate.
Sport. Thank you,
Thank you
everyone
very
who's
much.
tuned in.
Cheers now.
And take care, everyone.